It's just an old fishing tub, fits the owner, doesn't it? The crypto king's laughter cracked like a whip across Harbor Point as his alabaster yacht bored into the weather-worn skiff. Wood shrieked, salt spray burst. On the splintered deck, Eli Carter Black, 78D, stooping yet unbowed, watched the only home the sea had ever given him crack apart under a billionaire's indifference. No hand reached down. Phones tilted up. Someone joked the harbor looked cleaner already. The torn American flag, sun-bleached, sweat-stained, once folded on distant war decks, slipped from a broken mast and drifted, Starfield first, into the foam. Eli knelt, arthritic fingers closing on nothing but cold water. The yacht's guests toasted sunrise champagne. One captioned their clip, "When old meets gold." Harborside's boardwalk echoed with likes, not questions. At dawn's first blush the next day, engines hushed as an unexpected procession glided through the fog. 6 gray Navy vessels in deliberate, funeral formation filled the cove. Their own colors flew at half-mast, mourning something the town had chosen not to see. Yacht horns fell mute, gulls circled in uncanny silence, and every bystander's screen lowered, as though ashamed. The sea, a patient judge of arrogance and memory, had returned to speak on behalf of an old black sailor whose dignity proved unsinkable. Harbor Point still slept when Elijah Eli Carter eased his skiff, Morning Grace, off its modest slip. The 78-year-old black veteran moved with a patience seawater had taught him, every creak of oarlock echoing decades of dawn departures. Salt and pine mixed in the cool air. Gulls wheeled overhead, indifferent witnesses, as he threaded between empty berths reserved for boats worth more than his cottage. Across the channel, boutique cafes glimmered behind glass, their espresso machines hissing like small steam engines, preparing the privilege for another carefree day. Neon running shoes slapped the boardwalk. Joggers glanced at Eli, eyes sliding away as if acknowledging him violated some coastal etiquette. One murmured, "We're upgrading the view, finally. Loud enough for companions, soft enough to deny intention." Eli knew the unseen lines painted on this water. In 1965, the harbormaster had posted them openly. Commercial-colored craft keep south of Buoy 7. Progress painted the signs white, but memory preserved every coordinate. He, last of the old river coasters, still honored the injustice by crossing freely each dawn, a quiet defiance the bay preferred to forget. He hummed a hymn his grandmother once sang over washboards, strokes matching the melody. Each pull of the oars turned worry into rhythm. War nightmares that chased him ashore could not swim. Out here, only tide commanded. His patched jacket, smelling of tar and thyme, flapped like an enlistment flag no wind could retire. By the time gold edged the horizon, Eli reached the cove where Striped Base still respected a hand-tied lure. He killed the engine he couldn't afford, letting silence moor him. Beyond the breakwater, a neon banner advertised harbor tours. Aboard a triple edge-decker catamaran, see the future of coastal luxury. He smiled, knowing futures seldom ask permission. The Serenity cracked when a rental skiff drifted past bearing a blond boy and his father. The child pointed, curious. "Dad, why's that grandpa's boat so old?" The man's reply sliced the stillness. "Because some people don't move on, son." He tipped his cap at Eli without meeting his eye-polite dismissal, wearing the costume of courtesy. Eli cast a single line, not expecting fish so much as conversation with water. When the first tug came, he laughed softly, thankful the sea remained color-blind. Yet, from the marina speakers half a mile away, bass-heavy music boomed, promising an exclusive sunrise champagne cruise. The echo curdled his stomach a storm, forming somewhere unseen. He pulled the line, set the fish free, and turned his skiff toward home, unaware that in less than an hour, steel and arrogance would meet cedar and history. The harbor script was already written in merciless wake patterns. Only the players still pretended otherwise. Morning Grace creaked a warning the wind failed to translate. Eli inhaled the briny dawn, unaware that the same sea preparing to cradle his memories would soon churn with contempt, cameras, and a question no yacht owner had ever answered. What happens when silence finally belongs to the wrong man that morning? The sun had barely cleared the horizon when a throaty bass note rolled across Harbor Point. Eli lifted his head. Around the rocky bend, the $70 million yacht Marceline burst from the mist like an alabaster cliff on engines the size of boxcars. Chrome rails flashed, glass decks gleamed, and a thumping playlist mocked the morning hush. At the helm stood Dylan Mercer 32, spotless linen, suntanned, ego-flanked by investors and curated influencers. Champagne bottles popped with every nautical mile. A drone hummed overhead, live streaming their coastal takeover to followers who measured success by length and luster. Eli steered Morning Grace to starboard, raising a safety paddle painted Coast Guard orange. His voice, rough but clear, carried across the water. "Vessel inbound. Maintain distance." A ripple of laughter floated back. Mercer cupped a hand to his mouth. "Come on, Captain AAR Pertire, the rowboat," the deck roared approval. Someone added, "Probably stole that flag off a pawnshop wall." Eli's jaw clenched. He trimmed his sail and cut the tiny outboard, giving way as far as the channel allowed. Behind him, a pair of paddleboarders paused, phone cameras up. One whispered, "Old guy doesn't stand a chance," with a shrug as casual as littering. Marceline neither slowed nor altered course. Its bow wave slapped Morning Grace, rocking Eli to his knees. He recovered, held the flagstaff upright, a battered pole bearing the same stars and stripes he had saluted through monsoon nights. 20 yards, 15, 10. Eli waved again, throat raw. "You're on collision." The yacht's horn drowned him out. Mercer tipped his flute, crimson wine spilling like stage blood onto teak. "Who gives a docky fee about one more relic?" Impact. Steel crushed cedar with a crack that sent gulls screaming skyward. Morning Grace shuddered, stern opening like shattered ribs. Salt water rushed the cockpit. Splinters whipped past Eli's face. He leapt onto a mooring post, boots skidding, as his boat broke beneath him. The drowned engine coughed, then silenced forever. Gasps rose from the pier, crowd followed by the shimmer of phone screens. A blonde influencer giggled, "Content gold," tapping her record button. Mercer's entourage leaned over the rail, documenting their own arrogance. Eli's flagstaff snapped, fabric tumbling into foam. He lunged, arthritic fingers brushing stars before the tide stole them. Behind him, Harbor Officer Vince Morales idled in a patrol skiff, radio to his lips, yet frozen by wealth's invisible signature. Instead of sirens, only the yacht's playlist blurred a remix thick with bass, thin on conscience. Mercer lifted his sunglasses. "Dockmaster'll bill you for debris, Grandpa." Cheers followed. Eli straightened, seawater streaming from his cuffs, gazed steady on the man who had reduced a lifetime to driftwood. For one breath, he considered replying, but found nothing worth wasting on a deck that valued noise over respect. Around him, the bay filled with the floating remains of his labor. Planks he'd planed by hand, rope he'd spliced at 24, memories soaked in diesel and disregard. Above, camera drones circled like scavengers, hungry for the next viral fix. Eli gathered his silence, stepped onto the pier, and watched Morning Grace sink. The yacht's wake erased 40 years in under 40 seconds, and Harbor Point applauded with emojis. Eli sloshed knee-deep along the pier ladder, the tide licking his calves as he pinched the flag from the oily swell. The fabric felt heavier than iron, weighted with salt, grief, and a century of borrowed blood. He pressed it to his chest. Red stripes smeared his windbreaker like fresh cuts. Around him, the fragments of Morning Grace bobbed. A cedar thwart, a brass cleat, the hand-carved tiller he'd shaped on nights when sleep fled. Each piece thumped the pilings as if knocking for readmission to the life now closed. Above, lenses stayed hungry. A college kid on the boardwalk yelled, "Push him back, in get a thumbnail shot." Two friends laughed, chins glowing blue from their phones. The uploaded clip sprouted hashtags within minutes. "Old boat fail, harbor glow up." One comment read, "Should have painted it white, darker things sink faster." Another earned laughing emojis. "Guess reparations don't cover dock fees." Officer Vince Morales finally swung his patrol skiff alongside, clipboard at parade rest. His tone matched the morning fog dents, detached. "Mr. Carter, I need a statement. Your vessel lacked radar reflectors and up-roady-date nav lights. That's a violation under Harbor Code 712. Eli stared at the man's polished badge, then at Marceline lounging in her slip like a satisfied predator. "Reflectors wouldn't have stopped willful eyes from closing," he said quietly. Morales checked a box. Still a breach, sir. Insurance may refuse liability. He glanced up, lowering his voice. Best not push. Folks get defensive when money's involved. A salty breeze carried the metallic jangle of brunch silverware from the shoreside bistro. Diners leaned over railings for the live spectacle of tragedy as appetizer. One gray-suited patron remarked, "Harbor's been declining for years. Time we modernize these eyesores." The waitress, barely 20, shifted on her feet, lips parting, but the table called for mimosas and her courage retreated under minimum wage. Eli limped to the dock, trousers dripping, and knelt beside an overturned hull plank. With a carpenter's reverence, he traced the grain, remembering Sunday afternoons spent sanding it smooth while his late wife hummed gospel in the yard. Behind him, a teenage filmer muttered, "Man, he's milking it." A second voice answered, "Relax. Clicks are clicks." Across town, Naomi Carter refreshed her feed between shifts at the community clinic. The viral headline froze her pulse. Luxury meets legacy guess which one sinks. She bolted, headphones forgotten, fury sprinting her down back streets toward the harbor. Meanwhile, Mercer's publicist issued a statement. Mr. Mercer regrets the unfortunate boating incident and pledges a review of harbor safety guidelines to prevent future collisions. Eli read the release on a bystander's phone. Not a word naming him. Not a syllable of apology. Only the soft erasure of passive grammar. He folded his soaked flag into a trembling triangle, ignoring the ache in his knuckles, and whispered the first line of the sailor's prayer. Gulls drifted overhead, indifferent judges. As the tide receded, splinters settled in mud like unburied bonus testimony awaiting a jury that had so far logged in only to laugh. Twilight settled over Harbor Point like blue gauze, hiding the day's debris but not its sting. Eli sat at his kitchen table, sea-wet clothes exchanged for a threadbare cardigan that still smelled faintly of cedar shavings. A single lamp pooled light onto an open ledger, its pages rippled by decades of salt. Every line bore neat handwriting date: weather, catch, repair sand, ordinary sailor's chronicle of extraordinary persistence. Tonight he hesitated before writing, as though grammar might betray him. Finally the pen scratched. Day 9, 415 first without a keel. A local news anchor beamed from his TV, her smile lacquered. Harbor Point welcomed new tech investment today as the super yacht Marceline docked, symbolizing inclusive economic growth. The camera panned across Mercer's champagne-soaked entourage. All white, all young, exclusive in every unspoken way. Not a frame showed Morning Grace's wreckage. The anchor continued. Harbor officials remind boaters to follow modern safety standards. Eli clicked the mute button, silence louder than any indictment. Footsteps pounded the porch. Naomi burst in, cheeks blazing. She had sprinted the 2 miles from downtown, hospital scrub still flecked with antiseptic. "Grandpa, they're lying!" she cried, thrusting her phone forward. The screen showed comments under the viral clip. "He shouldn't have been in the main lane. They're making it your fault." Naomi's voice cracked into the space where childhood faith and fairness used to live. Eli reached for a handkerchief, dabbed a salt trail from his jaw. "Mercer has lawyers. I have tide charts," he said, half smile, half resignation. Naomi slammed the phone on the table. "Sue him. Fight back," she insisted. "You taught me justice matters." He met her eyes-brown mirrors of a wife buried 15 years and saw himself younger, fists still eager. "Justice," he murmured, "doesn't always pay legal fees." Naomi's fists clenched. "Remember when kids called me Doc Shadow? You said water washes names away. Well, it didn't wash their laughter." She sank into a chair, tears suspended by anger's surface tension. "I won't let them erase you." Eli closed the ledger, slid it toward her. "Words stay," he whispered. Naomi's gaze fell on inked decadestrum survived, engines fixed, dolphins escorted. The unspoken, racial insults endured, loan denials shrugged off, docks that charged him double rent. He had recorded none of those. Pain, he believed, should not earn a line equal to sunrise. Outside, Harbor Point's lights glittered like coins tossed into dark water. A text pinged on Naomi's phone. "Thoughts? Prayers to your grandpa?" She tossed it aside. "Cheap empathy," she muttered. Eli stood, joints protesting, and fetched a cedar box from the mantel. Inside lay a folded, pristine flag, the retirement gift the Navy had placed in his arms when he mustered out. He set it beside the wet, torn one. "People decide which flag they salute," he said softly. Naomi traced the dry cloth's crisp edges, then the frayed holes of its twin. The room fell quiet except for the sea whispering against distant pilings, reciting promises it could not keep. Eli placed a fresh sheet in the ledger. "No condolences offered, but I can still hear the water calling." As ink dried, a single tear dropped, stippling the date like a second punctuation mark, sealing grief with permanence no yacht could ever purchase. Thick, milky fog swallowed Harbor Point long before sunrise, brushing salt against Eli Carter's porch as though the sea itself were trying to apologize. He stood with a chipped mug of chicory coffee, cardigan buttoned to his throat, watching vapor writhe over the black water. A single porch light painted his silhouette in amber, revealing the soggy, folded flag resting on the railing beside him, stripes still bleeding dye like a slow-healing wound. Unable to sleep, he had opened Naomi's old tablet, hoping for weather reports. Instead, he found speculation masquerading as news. A podcast host mocked the elderly skipper who ignored basic tech. Commenters piled on, "Coast Guard's gonna tow his hide for negligence. Bet that relic can't afford proper insurance." Some turned uglier. Typical blame the successful white guy when a black bum sinks himself. Eli read in silence, thumb hovering over the power button, then set the device face you down, as if mercy could mute malice. Inside, Naomi typed furious replies from her apartment across town, but rage felt like rowing in circles. "Let it be, child," he had texted an hour earlier. She answered only with a storm of broken heart emojis. He understood. At her age, he too had believed justice was a door you could kick open. 3 low blasts rolled through the mist, rattling coffee in his cup. The harbor, Foghorn 3, means large vessels entering the channel. Eli's spine straightened on instinct. He counted seconds, waiting for the return signal. None came, only damp silence and the distant clatter of anchor chains. Curiosity pulled residents from warm condos. Pajama-made couples shuffled onto balconies, phones ready. A bartender exiting the night shift muttered, "Probably Coast Guard coming to cite the old guy," another replied. "Hope they fine him for emotional damages." Their chuckles died when the foghorn sounded again, measured, ceremonial, like a drumbeat at a funeral. Gray shapes resolved through the curtain. One, then another, then 4 more, whole numbers ghosting into view. They advanced in perfect echelon, wakes braided with precision no pleasure craft could mimic. Each flew the American flag butt half-mast, dark against the whitening sky. The water, previously choppy with charter traffic, stilled, as if commanded. Murmurs rippled along the docks. Some tourists lifted cameras. Others lowered them, sensing this was no spectacle to hashtag. Eli placed his mug on the rail. His breath caught, not from the chill but from recognition. Those profiles. Those disciplined lines belonged to Naval Gray. He stepped to the edge of his porch, hand unconsciously moving toward a salute, then stopping, unsure whether one salutes unanswered questions. Engines idled down. The harbor, once ruled by bass and laughter, surrendered to reverent quiet. Somewhere behind the fog, a bosun's pipe trilled. Eli pressed the wet flag closer to his heart, the cotton cold against his sternum. Whatever the world believed about him, the sea was sending witnesses, and Harbor Point would soon learn how loudly silence could speak. The fog peeled back like theater drapery, revealing the lead destroyer sliding against the main pier with surgical grace. Lines shot to waiting sailors who moved as one, boots thudding in cadence that silenced gulls and gossip alike. Spectators crowded the railing sod owners in cashmere, dockhands in oil-stained denim, tourists still in slipper seats held by a gravity they did not yet understand. From the gangway emerged Commander Rachel Kim, dress whites crisp, metals catching dawn's first blade of light. She carried a blue-starred triangle and walked straight toward Elijah Carter, still on his porch landing. Her voice, amplified only by discipline, carried across the water. "Chief Signalman Carter, permission to come ashore and render honors." Eli swallowed, remembering protocol older than some ships behind her. He raised a trembling hand in salute. "Permission granted, Commander." Murmurs rippled across the docks. Kim turned to the hushed crowd. 49 years ago, in typhoon conditions off the South China Sea, This man sealed a ruptured boiler aboard USS Gadsden, saving 117 sailors, including Methan, a cadet who could barely hold a wrench. She paused, scanning faces. He did so while enduring insults that doubted his rank, his skin, his very right to serve. An elderly fisherman tugged his cap low. A teenager filming let the phone drop to his side. The harbor, so quick to judge, now listened in shamed stillness. A color guard stepped forward. Rifles gleamed damp in the light. The senior petty officer presented a polished brass plaque. For valor beyond uniform and time. Kim handed Eli the folded flagry, immaculate, the opposite of the torn relic pressed to his heart. Tears blurred his vision. He managed, "The sea never forgets her crew." The commander replied, "Nor does their navy." Phones rose again, but faces were softer. The live stream ticker flipped. Old boat fail drained into Black Veteran Honor, then Salute Eli. Comments shifted from mockery to mea culpa. Deleting my last post. I'm ashamed. Naomi watched from the pier edge, shoulders shaking with vindication. Across the country, morning news anchors cut from weather to the ceremony, eyes bright with sudden gravitas. On the glistening deck of Marceline, Dylan Mercer lowered his sunglasses, color draining beneath the tan. His guests stood mutely, champagne fizzed unnoticed. For a moment he reached for a phone, then let it dangle. No filter could reframe this narrative. Reporters ashore turned lenses toward him, their earlier admiration curdling into inquiry. Bugles sounded a slow salute. Every sailor aboard the 6 ships snapped to attention, white gloves raised. Cashmere yachtsmen, children clutching ice cream money, Officer Morales straightened unknowingly into parade rest. Eli's flag-old and soaked hung beside the new one, red meeting red, history grafted to renewal. When the final note faded, Harbor Point exhaled. Naomi broke into relieved tears on the shore. The commander saluted once more and said only, "Honor stands." Eli answered, voice cracking, "And prejudice sinks." Applause unfurled like a long Gadinite anthem, rolling over water that was deeper, capable of holding more than wealth it could hold conscience. The fog closed, but minds stayed open. Late afternoon sunlight dusted Harbor Point in bronze as work crews lowered the naval gangplank. The destroyers had sailed at noon, leaving behind rumors, reverence, and a hush that hung like incense over the water. Eli sat on a folding chair beside the pier, sleeves rolled to expose forearms crosshatched with age and old burns. Naomi stood nearby, fielding interview requests with polite refusals. Her eyes never strayed far from her grandfather. She knew storms could follow calm. They arrived without entourage this time, Dylan Mercer in boat shoes scuffed from pacing, his publicist dismissed at the gate. He carried a plain envelope and a stiffness new to his posture. 20 feet from Eli, he slowed, as if the air itself resisted unchecked privilege. "Mr. Carter," he began, voice frayed, "I've come to apologize." Words rehearsed, yet heavy. Eli motioned to the adjacent chair. Mercer hesitated, then sat, envelope balanced on restless knees. "I was arrogant," he managed. "I saw an obstacle, not a person. This check," he slid it forward, "is blank. Whatever number rebuilds your boat, your life, write it." Naomi's jaw tightened. Eli unfolded the paper, eyes tracing the unsigned promise before setting it on his lap. "Money fixes boards and paint," he said, tone steady, "but not the harbor's eyesight." Mercer swallowed. "Then tell me what will." Across the pier, children practiced tying knots under a volunteer petty officer. Their laughter floated between the men like a language both had forgotten. Eli watched them a moment. "Build a bench," he said finally. "Cedar. Place it where my boat moored. Carve 3 words. Look beyond first glance." Mercer blinked. "That's..." He caught himself before saying cheap, then nodded. "Of course, I'll have a contractor." "No," Eli interrupted gently. "You, with your own hands, let the blisters remind you." The billionaire's shoulders sagged, pride deflated yet strangely lighter. "I'll start tomorrow," he whispered. News of Eli's request rippled through town faster than any check could clear. Some neighbors scoffed, old man wasted a fortune. Others felt the lesson land where wallets could not reach. The dockside hardware store closed early, owners stepping out with cedar planks donated at cost. A retired carpenter offered chisels. By sunset, a small brigade Mercer, dockhands, Two teenage vloggers, now repentant, gathered to plane, sand, and assemble. Mercer's manicured fingers blistered before the first board smoothed. He hissed, pressed on. Eli watched from the shade, offering pointers. Grain runs east-west, same as wind. The lesson etched deeper than cedar. Passersby paused, some offering water, others silence. Officer Morales delivered iced lemonade with an embarrassed nod. Prejudice was thirsty work, unlearning itself. At dusk, the bench stood finished, broad, sea-aided, seaworthy, still fragrant. Mercer knelt to inlay bronze letters, look beyond first glance. When the final period tapped into place, harbor lights flickered on, reflecting in his tarot-rimmed eyes. He extended a raw, bandaged hand. Eli shook it once. Firmly, contract signed in humility, not ink. Naomi snapped a photo. A black veteran, a chastened millionaire, a bench bridging two worlds. Within minutes, the image trended under beyond first glance. Testimony that cause and effect could trade loud vengeance for quiet repair. And as gulls settled on moonlit railings, Harbor Point learned that true restitution is a verb, not a payment. 1 week later, dawn rolled in on a tide of cedar scent. Harbor Point's main dock, once the stage for mockery, now hummed with quiet purpose. Veterans of every stripe had worked through nights, blueprints propped on tackle boxes, coffee in mesa hall mugs. Their shared creation waited at the slip. A skiff glimmering new moon blue beneath flat morning light. Eli arrived without fanfare, leaning on a cane polished by decades. The crowd parted, offering space, not pity. Floating before him was grace renewed. Its lines echoed morning grace, but carried solar lights, reinforced ribs, and a bow plaque bronze like the bench reading, built by many, inspired by one. Naomi pressed a bottle of sparkling cider into his hands. He tapped it against the prow. May she ride fair seas and teach fair hearts. Glass burst, cheers rose. Kids from the youth program waved homemade signal flags. Officer Morales distributed life vests with newfound patience. Eli guided Naomi aboard, then beckoned the children. Every knot tells a story, he said, threading rope through cleat. Small fingers copied his loops, faces alight with discovery instead of screens. On the bench, Dylan Mercer sat alone, bandaged palms resting on cedar, reading the words he carved. Look beyond first glance. Grace renewed nosed into open water. Dockside latte drinkers paused to salute, some lowered heads in apology. Mid-channel, Eli demonstrated the bowline. A girl asked, "Is the sea scary?" He smiled. Only to those who don't listen. Water always speaks first. Back at the pier, the bench awaited. Bronze letters catching sunlight. Tourists read, then sat. Conversations shifting from property values to unseen stories. Harbor Point was learning patience. Eli moored the skiff beside an empty berth labeled Community Craft. Naomi slipped her arm through his. Bench in foreground, boat at rest, horizon flaring wide, 3 points of a compass no prejudice could bend. The breeze carried children's rope rhymes, gulls wheeled overhead. Harbor Point, once obsessed with surface shine, had found a deeper gloss, the quiet luster of earned respect. Eli touched the bronze plaque, then the cedar seat, then the rail of his new vessel. Wood can be rebuilt, he whispered. Hearts have to choose. As tide turned, both bench and boat held steady, proof that when a town looks past first glance, it becomes seaworthy at last. A modest dedication followed. The choir sang, "Lift every voice and sing," its refrain skimming the water. Commander Kim, in denim, handed Eli a certificate naming him Harbor Point's first youth seamanship mentor. Naomi accepted and spoke 9 words. Respect is a tide, fight it, and you sink. Even skeptics nodded. Mercer wiped a tear. That evening, the bench turned gathering place. Fishermen swapped weather tips, children traced the lettering with sandy fingers. Someone left a single rose where cedar met bronze pledge to guard against old habits. Each hour, the bell buoy chimed, reminding Harbor Point that value is measured not by hull length, but by depth of grace for all.